Some people don't cheat because they're in love with someone else. They cheat because, for a fleeting moment, it makes them feel in control. Powerful, wanted, especially when deep down, they feel powerless in everything else. Welcome to Broken Truth, where love meets lies, and every story reveals the pain behind the smile. Cheating isn't always about lust, it's often about ego. For some, being unfaithful gives them a high. A temporary sense of control in a life where they feel invisible, small, or inadequate if they were neglected in their past, made to feel powerless or emotionally abandoned. Betrayal becomes a twisted form of reclaiming authority. It becomes less about the person they betray and more about the brokenness inside them that finds comfort in being desired elsewhere. Power, not love, becomes the currency, and cheating becomes their way of escaping their own inferiority. Even if only for a moment, they always said love was supposed to feel like home. But what do you do when the person you built your home inside of leaves? Not with goodbye, but with someone else's perfume on their skin? I didn't find out all at once. That's the worst part. I unraveled the truth in pieces, a stranger's name showing up too often, a shift in how he kissed me, the silence between messages that used to be filled with longing. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was quiet, strategic, like he'd rehearsed it. But if I'm honest, it wasn't just what he did, it was who he had always been. I loved a man who never felt enough on his own. A man who wore compliments like armor and carried his insecurities like weapons. And I, foolish, hopeful, desperate for love that didn't ask me to shrink, I gave him all the light I had, not realizing he only stood close so he could steal. He didn't cheat because I lacked something. He cheated because validation made him feel powerful. And I made the mistake of thinking my loyalty could compete with that kind of addiction. He once told me, "You're the only one who really sees me." I thought it was love, but now I think maybe it was fear. Maybe he needed to be surrounded by people who only saw the version he performed. With me, there was no mask, and maybe being seen without illusion made him feel small. So he turned to the people who didn't know him, the women who only saw his charm, his confidence, the well-rehearsed, boyish grin. They didn't know about his mother's emotional distance. They didn't know about the father who never came to his school plays. They didn't know that he'd always felt invisible, and that the only way he'd ever learned to feel valuable was to be desired. He didn't cheat out of passion, he cheated to escape the ache of feeling ordinary. It hurts, because I gave him a love that saw all his broken parts and stayed. I loved the scars he tried to hide. I memorized the way his voice cracked when he talked about the past. I held him through nights when he shook with fears he never named, and in return, he chose attention over intimacy. He chose the spotlight over the shelter. That's when I realized, for people like him, cheating isn't about falling for someone else. It's about needing to feel like a god when deep down, they feel like a ghost. He never apologized properly. He said things like, "I didn't mean to hurt you," or "it just happened," or "you've always been more than enough." But never once did he say, "I needed to feel powerful." And I used betrayal to get there, but I pieced it together, like a detective at the scene of her own heartbreak. I looked at the fragments, the flirty conversations he called harmless, the way he lit up when others admired him, the sudden emotional distance he explained as stress. It was all there. I just didn't want to believe that someone who claimed to love me could also use my heart as collateral for his ego. He said I was safe, and I think that's exactly why he risked me, because when you're addicted to feeling desired, being loved starts to feel boring. Comfort feels like a cage. And someone who would never leave you becomes someone you believe you can afford to lose. He didn't want me to stop loving him. He just wanted the thrill of wondering if someone else might. And now I sit here with all the questions I'll never get answers to. Was she prettier? Funnier? Did she know she was part of a pattern? Did she think she was special? Or did she know he was just borrowing her attention to fill a void? I try not to think about her. She's not the villain. She's just a symptom of the sickness. The real tragedy is this: I gave everything to a man who used my love like a mirror to see how big he looked in someone else's eyes. And when I stopped inflating him, he went looking for another reflection. But here's what hurts the most: not the betrayal itself, but the fact that I kept blaming myself for not being enough. When the truth is, he didn't even know what enough looked like. He was chasing a feeling, not a person. He wanted the high of being wanted, not the depth of being known. And I was just the constant, the anchor he returned to until the next wave of admiration pulled him under again. I wish I could hate him, but I mostly feel hollow. Like I spent all my love trying to patch a leaking boat, only to drown in the same ocean I was trying to keep us afloat in. The night I walked away, he didn't stop me. Maybe part of him knew I'd finally seen it. Not the cheating, but the reason. The broken little boy hiding behind the man who needed to feel powerful so badly. He destroyed the only place he was truly loved, and maybe I finally understood that no matter how much love I poured in, it would never be enough for someone who leaks it out through the cracks of his own emptiness. I still miss him. That's the hardest part to admit. I miss the version of him I believed in, the one who held my hand in the grocery store, the one who kissed my forehead when I overthought everything, the one who told me I made him feel safe. But now I wonder, did he ever mean those things? Or did he say them because he knew I needed to hear them? I try not to spiral. I try to remember that healing isn't linear, that some days I'll feel strong and others I'll reread old texts and pretend he didn't lie through his teeth. But every day I remind myself I was not betrayed because I lacked something. I was betrayed because he lacked the ability to hold love without trying to dominate it. And that's not on me. The silence after heartbreak isn't really silent. It hums with questions, regrets, half memories, and a kind of tired ache that clings to your skin, even when you try to sleep. For a while, I mistook the quiet for emptiness. I thought I had to fill it with noise, with distractions, with reaching out to people who didn't know how to stay. But I learned that silence, when you stop fearing it, becomes a place to rest, a place to return to yourself. There was no grand epiphany, no dramatic morning where I woke up suddenly healed, just a small, quiet moment, standing by the sink, washing a coffee cup he once used, where I realized I had survived something that was meant to break me. And that was enough to begin. At first, the healing looked like survival, breathing through anxiety, eating even when food felt heavy in my mouth, saying no to texts I would have once answered just to feel needed. But eventually, the healing started. Looking like choice, I stopped rereading old messages, not out of anger, but because they no longer held power over me. I stopped wondering who he was with, because I realized that knowing wouldn't bring me peace. I stopped blaming myself for the betrayal, because I had loved honestly, and there's nothing shameful about that. I began talking to myself like someone I loved. I caught the way. I flinched when someone raised their voice. I noticed how I apologized when I hadn't done anything wrong, and slowly I started to ask, why? Why did I think love meant sacrifice? Why did I ignore the red flags I now see so clearly? Why did I let someone's absence define my worth? And the answer was always the same. I was never taught how to stay with myself. I was only ever taught how to hold others, so I started learning. I learned that love without boundaries is not love. It's abandonment of self. I learned that if someone makes you question your reality over and over, that's not passion, that's manipulation. I learned that you can forgive someone quietly without ever letting them back in. I made a list of the things I missed about him, and then beside each one, I wrote how I could give that to myself. Safety, comfort, reassurance, touch, laughter. I stopped waiting for someone else to bring me peace. I started setting small boundaries, even with friends, saying I need time without guilt. Letting calls go unanswered when I didn't have the energy. I started walking away the moment I felt someone using me as a mirror. Not a person. I trusted the heaviness in my chest. It had always been trying to protect me. One day, I passed a man on the street who looked like him, and I didn't flinch. I just kept walking. I think that's the day I knew I had taken my power back. Not the kind of power that controls others, but the kind that keeps you from abandoning yourself again. I still believe in love, but now I believe in the kind that doesn't ask me to disappear to earn it. I believe in soft boundaries and open hearts. I believe in paying attention when someone avoids accountability. I believe in listening to my gut, not my guilt. I don't want a love that makes me feel small just to make someone else feel big. I want something mutual, something safe, something real. And I know now that before I can find that in someone else, I have to keep choosing it in myself over and over, on the hard days, on the healing days, on the days where I still cry. And even on the days I laugh again, because I'm not the person who was left behind anymore. I'm the person who stayed when it hurt, who stayed through the silence, who stayed until I remembered I was never too much. I just gave too much to someone who didn't know how to hold it. Now I give carefully, I listen longer, I protect my peace like it's sacred. And when something doesn't feel right, I don't beg for clarity, I leave, because red flags aren't puzzles. They're warnings, and I finally love myself enough to walk away before I'm bleeding again. I'm still healing, but this time, I'm healing forward when someone cheats to feel powerful. It's never a reflection of your worth, it's a mirror of their wounds. This is Broken Truth. Subscribe for more stories that help you see clearly through the hurt.